Again, no whispering. Whispering is considered inauspicious.
Sorry.
Hare Krishna. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasad Gita Vishmati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinami Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pacharine Devi Se Sasrunyavadi Paskati Visitarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Gaur Premanandi Hare. So today we're on chapter 1 still, and verse number 8, I think. Today we'll read a lot. Okay. Who would like to read?
130.
Verse number 8, I think. Or is it verse number 13?
Yeah, we read 11.
Okay.
And 12, I think.
Okay.
1 and 12. 11 and 1 12.
Very good. Okay. 13, yes.
After that, the conch shells, drums, bugles, trumpets, and horns were all suddenly surrounded. And the
Sounded, not surrounded.
Sounding.
Yeah.
Suddenly sounded, and the combined sound was tumultuous.
Tumultuous.
On the other side, both Lord Krishna and Arjuna, stationed on a great chariot drawn by white horses, sounded their transcendental conch shells. Purport. In contrast with the conch shell blown by Bhishma Dev, the conch shells in the hands of Krishna and Arjuna are described as transcendental. The sounding of the transcendental conch shells indicated that there was no hope of victory for the other side because Krishna was on the side of the Pandavas. Jayastu Pandu Putranam Yasham Pakshe Janardanaha. Victory is always with persons like the sons of Pandu because Lord Krishna is associated with them. And whenever and wherever the Lord is present, the goddess of fortune is also there because the goddess of fortune never lives alone without her husband. Therefore, victory and fortune were awaiting Arjuna as indicated by the transcendental sound produced by the conch shell of Vishnu or Lord Krishna. Besides that, the chariot on which both the friends were seated had been donated by Agni, the fire god, to Arjuna, and this indicated that this chariot was capable of conquering all sides wherever it was drawn over the three worlds.
Very good. So there are many significant statements here, but one is that the goddess of fortune is also there because the goddess of fortune never lives alone without her husband. Okay, so this is significant because many people today, they like to worship Lakshmi Devi alone without her husband. And that is a big mistake because when Lakshmi Devi is worshipped alone, she becomes chanchal, which means in Hindi, what's chanchal mean, Puja?
Ushrinkal, that means not stable.
That's right. So, people worship Lakshmi for wealth, but whatever wealth they get will not be stable because they worshipped her without her husband. See? So it's always Lakshmi Narayana. So her husband is there as Krishna. Krishna and Narayana are the same person. Therefore, if we do things correctly, then we get a genuine positive result. And if we do things whimsically, following, let's call it inferior advice, then the result we get is chanchal. It's not steady. Everybody likes sustainable happiness, sustainable peace. But if we get unsteady or let's say fluctuating happiness, fluctuating peace, it's not really happiness. So there were many signs that the battle was going to go against Duryodhana and his followers. Now, what's the difference between the conch shell blown by Bhisma and the conch shells in the hands of Krishna and Arjuna? They are described as transcendental. And so, what is the sound of a transcendental conch shell? That's an interesting point to think about. The sounding of the transcendental conch shells indicated that there was no hope of victory for the other side because Krishna was on the side of the Pandavas. Victory is always with persons like the sons of Pandu because Lord Krishna is associated with them. And whenever and wherever the Lord is present, the goddess of fortune is also there because the goddess of fortune never lives alone without her husband. Therefore, victory and fortune were awaiting Krishna, as indicated by the transcendental sound produced by the conch shell of Vishnu. So Krishna's or Vishnu's conch shell is called Panchajanya. There's a story about the Panchajanya. I don't remember it right now. So I think the most important point for us is that if we associate ourselves with Krishna in this lifetime, then we will be guaranteed success. But what is that success? That success is that you'll get the protection of Krishna. And what is Krishna's protection? He frees his devotees from the reactions of past sins so that they can be engaged in the service of Krishna without any hindrance. And this is explained at the end of the 7th chapter, verse 28, where it says, Esam twantikatam papam jananam punya karmanam te dvandva mohanir mukta bhajantimam jutavata. 7th chapter, 28th verse of Bhagavad Gita, which says, persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. So here is an important concept that's introduced. It says, dualities of delusion. So we should analyze what this actually means. It means that duality is a symptom of being entrapped in the material world. So duality means we are faced with several choices and we can't make up our mind. Which is the right one, which is the wrong one. Why is that? Because we don't have a final goal in life, that's why. As long as we don't have a final goal in life, we will be subject to dualities. And sometimes we won't be able to make up our mind what is the right thing to do. So, how to avoid that? If we decide early on in our life that our goal, our one goal in life, or primary goal in life, is to develop pure love for Krishna through the medium of devotional service, then we have a final goal. And all the decisions we make in our life are decisions that are favorable for reaching that goal. So that is an important issue. Like for example, sometimes people say, well, should I live in America or should I live in India? Well, how would we decide what is the best thing to do? There are so many reasons. Someone can say, well, my parents are getting old, they need my help, or, I'm having trouble with my green card, or my visa, or I don't like Trump, or, there's so many reasons we might find. But the way to avoid that duality, should I live here or should I live there, is where can I become Krishna conscious the easiest and the best way? Because if you have a final goal, the final goal is to develop love for Krishna through the medium of devotion. And devotion requires sadhu sangha, good association. Where am I going to get the best association to help me advance my spiritual life, to develop genuine love for Krishna? Then we are no longer subject to duality. Then we have a straightforward, way of making decisions in life. But if we don't have that final goal, then what does it do? It creates mental confusion and distress, and we're never sure what we're going to do. We're always wavering this way and that way, and we're full of doubts. Therefore, it says, "Ajnas chastradadasya samsayatma vinasyati nayam lokusti na paro nasukam samsayatma naha." 4th chapter, 40th verse. 4th chapter, 40th verse. But ignorant and faithless persons who doubt the revealed scriptures do not attain God consciousness. They fall down. For the doubting soul, there is happiness neither in this world nor the next. So that should be remembered. Nayam lokostina paro nasukam samsayatmanaha. For the doubting soul, there's neither happiness in this world nor the next. So that is a fundamental, let's call it an axiom of life. An axiom. Axiom is something that's irrefutably true. Right? So an axiom of life is, for the doubting soul, there's neither happiness in this world nor the next. Doubting what? Doubting the words of Krishna. Doubting the Shastric evidence. So what does the Shastra do? It gives you the answer to every metaphysical question of life. What does metaphysical mean? Those questions about the purpose of life, the nature of the soul and its relationship to Krishna, all those important questions are called metaphysical. So, coming back to the point, persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. So let's read the purport. You want to read the purport? That is 728. No, 728. Yeah.
So those eligible for elevation to the transcendental position are mentioned in this verse. For those who are sinful, atheistic, foolish and deceitful, it is very difficult to transcend the duality of desire and hate. Only those who have passed their lives in practicing the regulative principles of religion, who have acted piously and who have conquered sinful reactions, can accept devotional service and gradually rise to the pure knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then gradually they can meditate in trance on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the process of being situated on the spiritual platform. This elevation is possible in Krishna consciousness in the association of pure devotees, for in the association of great devotees one can be delivered from delusion. It is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam 5.5.2 that if one actually wants to be liberated, he must render service to the devotees. Mahat sevam dwaram ahur vimukte. But one who associates with materialistic people is on the path leading to the dark region of existence. Darkest, yes. Tamo dwaram yoshitam sangi sangham. All the devotees of the Lord traverse this earth just to recover the conditioned souls from their delusion. The impersonalists do not know that forgetting their constitutional position as subordinate to the Supreme Lord is the greatest violation of God's law. Unless one is reinstated in his own constitutional position, it is not possible to understand the Supreme Personality or to be fully engaged in his transcendental loving service with determination.
Okay, Sanskriti, tell us, explain what is delusion. How does it come about?
So first you make a mistake, like you might think like in the nighttime you think that a rope is a snake, and then you get an illusion, you think that the rope is actually a snake, and then delusion is you like believe that it's a snake and you run away.
You're fearful. You
yeah.
begin to act very strangely,
Yeah.
believing that it's a snake, and you
Run.
yeah. So now we understand what is a delusion. It's acting in a state of, let's say, artificially induced by believing something that's not true to be true. And it's like Y2K. People thought that, the world is coming to an end. So I know people that did really crazy things, believing that the world was going to come to an end. So what did they do? I know this one guy, he sold everything he had and bought a property in New Mexico, in some far-off place in New Mexico. He did not vet the property at all. He did not do a careful study of this property. Go to the city or the county and look it up on the records and find out what you can do, what you can't do. So he buys a property that doesn't have a rite of passage through the neighbor's property, right? It's surrounded by neighbors and there's no rite of passage. So he buys a property and Y2K comes, nothing happens. Right? And he gets into a legal fight with the neighbors who refuse to give him passage. Loses the fight, tries to sell the property, and he can only sell it for 1/10 of what he bought it for. And he has to sell it to one of the neighbors that he hates. And he comes back completely ruined. Why? Because he panicked, or he became convinced of something that wasn't true, and he acted in a very strange way, and he lost everything. Now, people thought the world was going to come to an end on December 2014, or 15, according to the Mayan calendar, right? I know there were people, that acted very strangely, thinking this is actually going to happen. So we see that there is periodically it happens, a scare tactic to put people in a state of delusion so that they make quick decisions by which certain people become very rich and many people lose money. Right? It happens all the time. Yeah. And that's the way people make money. They scare you, just like a doctor will say, oh, if you don't have this operation, we only give you, 3 months to live. Right? And they scare the heck out of you. Right? Huh? Did they try to do that to your mom?
My mom.
Yeah. What did I tell her?
To believe it. Yeah. Believe in Krishna, yeah.
Yeah.
Keep chanting.
So, this is happening all the time. Doctors do it, dentists do it,
Yeah.
all the
Okay.
time.
They told Sanskriti that, it's only 2 years. And then I asked them, they said retainer, she has to put whole life. I said, why would
Whole
you
life.
Why
Whole
would
life,
you
yeah.
put
They don't
something
guarantee
in your
anything.
whole
Was
life?
she a horse or something? At the retainer or something?
They charge like ridiculous amount of money.
Really? And they're like, nothing will happen. Everybody wears it. I'm like, why will she wear something whole life?
At some point, you'll get bored if you won't wear, and they'll get money again. Because you go again. That's
You have
the
to
thing.
take
That's what
it
I found.
off, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we see how dangerous it is to be in a state of delusion. Believing something that was never true, to be true, and then acting on it. It's not, illusion is, you haven't acted on it yet, you just believe it, right? Delusion is you actually believe it's true, and you begin to act as if it's true. And that's acting in a state of delusion. And then, there's a further statement here, the duality of, what's the statement? Duality of delusion, or the delusion of duality. It's the duality of delusion. Yeah. So the duality of delusion it's even more complicated concept. You're in a state of delusion, right? And just like there's a saying in my language, if you leave it up to the girl, either she'll marry the guy that plays the flute or the guy that plays the tabla. Which means instead of choosing someone who's like more serious in life, she wants to marry some musician, who's, just because he plays an instrument really nicely, it's not to insult musicians, but usually, even Plato said that all artists are actually lower than Sudras. And if you look at the life of most artists, it's a fact. They're very low-class people, but they've developed some talent in some way. But the talent doesn't mask the fact that they could be debauchees, they can be, really low-class people. Right? So, that's the duality of delusion. Either you marry the guy who plays the flute or the guy who plays the drum. I mean, both are losers. So that's the duality of delusion. You have a false concept in the mind, and then you're making choices between two things. Just like once there were two men walking down the street in India, and they saw a pile of dung, gobar, right, that had been in the sun a little bit. So the top of it was dry and the bottom was still wet. So they got into a discussion about which is better, the top or the bottom. Right? Now, it's all gobar, it doesn't matter, some of it is dry. But one guy insisted, no, the top is better because it's dry, a little more, the sun has made it a little more antiseptic than the bottom. But it's a ridiculous discussion. That's another, duality, the top of the gobar or the bottom of the gobar. It's all gobar, right? So we see this duality of delusion is a very dangerous thing. To be, when you're making you have two choices, both of them are bad, right? And first of all, both of them are false, right? Just like, and we're always faced with these dual proposals. Like, for example, once there was a very evil woman, and one day the devil came to talk to her because she was famous for being evil. I mean, he's evil too, so he wanted to see how evil she is. So he's talking to her and he says, I heard you're really evil. He said, yeah, I am. I'm very evil. He said, but can you give me something, can you do something to show me how evil you are? She said, yeah, I can do that. And he said, well, what are you going to do? She said, there's this one young sadhu, everybody respects him. I'll make him fall down. He said, no, that's not possible. I know that sadhu. I've been trying to make him fall down for a year or two, and I haven't succeeded. He said, leave it up to me. So she was an old woman. So she was one day in front of her house, sitting down on a chair and knitting, and the sadhu comes by. And the old woman calls him, and he goes up to her and he says, yes, mother, did you call me? He said, yes, my son. My daughter is very sick. I would like you to pray for her. He said, yeah, I'll do it. Where is she? She says, she's upstairs in the bedroom. She's very, very sick. Can you just go and pray for her? He said, sure, mother, I'll do it. So he enters the house, goes upstairs. When he enters the room, she locks the door behind him. And he's shocked, and why did she? So he knocks on the door and said, mother, did you lock the door? He says, yes, it's locked. Now you have two choices. He said, what? Two choices? What do you mean? He said, there's a bottle of wine on the table, and there's my daughter. Now, either you defile my daughter or you drink the bottle of wine. He said, what are you talking about? And she said, if you don't do one or the other, I'm going to call the police right now and say you forced your way into this bedroom and you're trying to molest my daughter. And he was shocked. He got confused, right? So he said, don't do that, don't do that. He got scared, right? So he said, don't do that, don't do that. He said, I'm going to do it. You just have 5 seconds to decide. He said, okay, I'll drink the wine, And he had never drank wine before in his life. So he drinks the wine, he gets drunk, the daughter gets out of the bed, walks up to him, and basically, he falls down. So now the question is, when the devil saw this, he said, wow, I'm definitely not going to stay near you very much. He said, you're good. He said, you're really good. You made this boy fall down. It was like it happened in a few minutes. So I tried for 1 year, I couldn't do it. You did it in a few minutes. You're really evil. She said, yes, I know that. So anyway, let's go back to the boy, the sadhu. What mistake did he make? Right? She asked him to come and pray for the daughter. He said the daughter is sick. So he made a major mistake. As a sadhu, especially a celibate Brahmin, he has no right to be alone with a woman. It's not allowed, right? But he was inexperienced, and he never imagined that this older woman, who spoke very nicely to him, could be evil. Right? He never imagined that. But because he didn't imagine it, he ignored a fundamental rule of, let's say, conduct. Now, let's say, he made, that's not a huge mistake, but it actually is a huge mistake. But some people would say it's not a huge mistake. Okay, but now he's locked in a room, and the evil woman gives him two choices. Either you drink the wine, or you defile my daughter. So, and because he has to make the decision really quickly, right? She said, you got 5 seconds, or I'm calling the police. I'm going to say you forced your way in here, and my daughter will say the same thing. So he gets scared, he gets confused, and he's given 2 choices. Both of them are bad, and he chooses one of them. And then because of that, he falls down. So, what should he have done? What would you do if you were in that position?
I guess I will not accept both of them.
Right.
Because both are evil.
Both are evil.
So
Both
I will
are
not
violations.
accept them.
He already violated the rules of conduct by going into the bedroom with that young girl. But he did it innocently, right? Because he was lacking experience. But he made a mistake already. Now he's given a choice between two other mistakes, which are much more serious. And because he lacked experience, he chose one of them, and then he fell down completely. He did everything that the woman wanted him to do, the old lady wanted him to do, right? So no, he should have said, no, you call the police. I'm a virtuous person. Maybe I made some mistake trusting you, but, I'll accept whatever punishment is going to be
The
given to
first
me.
mistake was unknowingly he has done, but once he realizes, he should stop further doing a mistake.
Exactly right. Exactly right. But see, the duality of delusion, is a very big concept. Delusion already is most people don't understand what the word delusion means. They don't understand that first you make a mistake, then you believe the mistake is true, and then you act as if it's true. Acting as if that illusion is true is called duality. And what is an illusion? An illusion is something you believe is true that was never true at any time. Like, I believe I am this body. That's an illusion, right? Never at any time was I this body, nor were you this body. And then after that, to believe, oh, this body is American, or this body is Indian, or this body is Telangana, or this body is Andhra, or this body is this or that. And then we in Telangana, we do like this. We don't eat like that, we eat like this. Right? We don't take the food like that and eat it like that. We take the food like this and eat it like this. And all nonsense stuff. It never at any time was any of that true. But they believe it's true. You see? So this duality of delusion is a major, major point. And in 7th chapter, 28th verse. Then again, it says, if you notice what you read there, how many times does it say gradual? The Krishna consciousness is a gradual process. Count the number of times it's in the first paragraph. I counted at least two. Yeah. It says, who have acted piously and who have conquered sinful reactions can accept devotional service and gradually rise to the pure knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then gradually they can meditate in trance on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the process of being situated. So, in other words, Krishna consciousness is a gradual process. It's not like in one day. It's not like hurry curry or fast food, right? It's a gradual process. It takes time. Why? Because for millions of lifetimes we've taken birth and death in the material world and been conditioned by lust, anger, and greed. Now, how long do you think it's going to take to get free of that conditioning? It's not overnight. It is possible in one lifetime. It is possible, but it's a gradual process. And if we think, there's fast food, so there should be fast Krishna consciousness also, or fast mukti. No, there's no such thing as fast mukti. Right. Okay. And then, so the worst thing is to associate with people who are, as it says here, Mahat Tamodwaram Yositam Sangi Sangam. To be attached to people who are attached to exploiting women. That's what that phrase, Yositam Sangi Sangam, means people who are attached to exploiting women. So, just read the newspaper. Now, what is it called? It's Me Too. The hashtag Me Too. Is that it?
I don't know what's going on with all the actors.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that the hashtag now?
I don't follow those people.
Yeah. Well, it's a hashtag on Twitter, I guess. If a woman has been abused by men in power, like politicians and movie stars and directors and so forth, then, millions of women have joined the conversation. Me too. Right? and now every day, all these big guys are being outed by women that they exploited. And, some are politicians, some are movie stars, some are athletes, some are professors, big businessmen. Anyone who's in a position of power, they take advantage. Even Bernie Sanders' campaign, Bernie Sanders, champion of the little guy, there were girls, working in his campaign that were harassed by by men working in the campaign, and also Hillary Clinton's campaign. So, 2 women came out today, one in Bernie Sanders' campaign, one in Hillary Clinton's campaign, and they're complaining that they complained to the higher ups and no one did anything. And then big newscasters and so forth. So that's the point, that as long as there are 5 categories in society of people, if those 5 categories are not protected, that society will go down. What are the 5 categories of people? Number 1, children. 2, women. 3, elderly persons. 4, cows. 5,
Earth.
no, it's not the earth. Okay, you have elderly people, you have women, you have children.
Youth.
Physically challenged.
I think it's Brahmins.
Brahmins,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brahmins.
Yeah. So these are the 5 categories. If they are not protected in the society, then that society will go down. It's not that, it has to be all 5. No, it can be just one of the 5. And that society will go down. So, and now we're seeing that this abuse of women is rampant throughout the whole society. Right. And then also, it's also in the news every day. Women that take advantage of younger boys. That's also in the news.
This is happening in America, probably?
Every day. You don't read the newspapers.
Yeah, the Me Too.
Yeah.
What-
verified program.
What
Yeah.
rock
Yeah.
are you living under? Not that you should, these are horrible things, so if you don't want to be aware of it, I can understand that. They're horrible things. They're not things that normal people or moral people would like to think about. But it's described in the Bhagavatam that these 5 categories of people in society, or if they're not protected, that society is doomed. Right. Okay, so here it says that Mahat Sevam Dwaram Ahur Vimuktes, but the door, the Dwaram to liberty, to liberation, Dwaram Vimukte, right? Just like if you go to Haridwar, that means the door to Hari, right? Well, then this is Dwaram Vimukte, the door to liberation is Mahat Sevam, serving genuine devotees. Right? Mahat Sevam Dwaram Ahuram Mukte. And the door to hell, Tamo Dwaram, the door to hell, right, is associated with people who abuse women. Right? Sangi Sang, Yositam Sangi Sangam. So, these are precious instructions. This instruction was given by Rishabhadev to his sons. He's teaching his sons how to become good people, good persons. All the devotees of the Lord traverse this earth just to recover the conditioned souls from their delusion. Well, that's what we're trying to do. Actually, a devotee becomes a killer. Not killer of the body, but killer of the desire for sense gratification. Because sense gratification is why we're in the material world. We didn't come here to smoke marijuana or eat meat or gamble. We came here for sense gratification, right? And that is what keeps people in the material world. And the sense gratifiers in this society are glorified. You look at all those shiny magazines at the checkout counter at Safeway or QFC or Walmart. You know, they have all those magazines. You know, so and so X is unhappy because so and so is going with this other person, or what. And they have pictures of all these people. You know, and it's chronicling the debauchery and sordid life of these so-called famous people. And people actually buy them, but the way they buy them is they look around, nobody's looking, they grab it right away, you know, and they put the cover down, right, you know, and then right away it goes into the basket, so no one sees it, right? Because you have to be a moron to buy those magazines, but yet the magazines are replenished every week, right? That means they're selling. They haven't, you know, like eliminated the magazines and replaced it with chewing gum, right? No, the magazines are there week after week after week, month after month, year after year. That means there are tons of morons buying that rubbish. And this is the low level of consciousness of people. Right? What do you expect? You know, if they're buying wine and meat, what's so surprising that they would read rubbish like that also, right? Okay, so therefore, unless one is reinstated in his or her own constitutional position, and constitutional position means in your position of service eternally to Krishna, it is not possible to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead or to be fully engaged in His transcendental loving service with determination. Okay. So now we'll go back to, I think, text 15, right? Is that right? Yes. Okay, who's going to, first chapter, text 15, who's going to read?
Lord Krishna blew his conch shell called Panchajanya. Arjuna blew his the Devadatta, and Bhima the
Voracious. That means he eats a lot.
eater and performer of
Herculean
tasks, blew his terrific conch shell called Pundra. Purport. Lord Krishna is referred to Hrishikesha in this verse because he is the owner of all senses. The living entities are part and parcel of him, and therefore the senses of the living entities are also part and parcel of his senses. The impersonalists cannot account for the senses of the living entities, and therefore they are always anxious to describe all living entities as senseless or impersonal. The Lord, situated in the hearts of all living entities, directs their senses, but He directs in terms of the surrender of the living entity, and in the case of the pure devotee, He directly controls the senses. Here on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, the Lord directly controls the transcendental senses of Arjuna, and thus his particular name of Hrishikesha. The Lord has different names according to his different activities. For example, his name is Madhusudana because he killed the demon of the name Madhu. His name is Govinda because he gives pleasure to the cows and to the senses. His name is Vasudeva because he appeared as the son of Vasudeva. His name is Devaki Nandana because he accepted Devaki as his mother. His name is Yashoda Nandana because he awarded his childhood pastimes to Yashoda at Vrindavana. His name is Pada Sardi because he worked as a charioteer of his friend Arjuna. Similarly, his name is Rishikesha because he gave direction to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra.
Okay, you read. Yeah.
Arjuna is referred to as Dhananjaya.
Dhananjaya.
In this verse because he helped his elder brother in fetching wealth when it was required by the king to make expenditures for
Expenditures, pronounce the word.
expenditures for different sacrifices. Similarly, Bhima is known as
Vrikodara.
such as killing the demon
Because
because he could eat as voraciously as he could perform
Herculean.
tasks such as killing the demon Hidimba. So the particular types of counsels blown by the different personalities on the side of the Pandavas, beginning with the Lord, where all were very encouraging to fight soldiers. On the other side, there was were no such credits. There were no such credits, nor the presence of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Director, nor that of the Goddess of Fortune. So they were predestined to lose the battle, and that was the message announced by the sounds of the council.
Okay, now, an interesting point here. Let's say there's two sides to a controversy. And both sides want you to join their side. How would you decide which side to join?
Whoever is acting on behalf of Dharma, we should follow them. We should accompany them.
What if it's Hindu Dharma?
No, it's
Or
not-
Muslim Dharma? Which side would you join?
whichever it is righteous. It is not Hindu or Muslim.
How do you define righteous? Both of them say theirs is righteous.
But as per Bhagavad Gita, we know what is righteous, not Hindu or Muslim.
So what is righteous?
So it is the Dharma means serving God. So anything which
Both of them say they're serving God.
So, but real service, like here, the Arjuna was taking the call based on Krishna, because serving Krishna is a dharma. Because as eternally, we
Okay,
are
so the
supposed
Muslim would say, oh no, Krishna is not God, it's Allah. And the Hindu would say, no, it's not Krishna, it's Shiva.
So here it is
They
not.
both say they're serving God. One says God is Allah, the other says God is Shiva.
But what we are actually doing, it is more important, right?
Well, no, it's important to know who is God, right?
So yeah,
So,
for me is Krishna.
okay. Well, the other one say for me it's Allah, and the other one say for me it's Shiva.
So we actually, when that point cannot be decided,
Someone will
then we
say for me it's Sai Baba.
No, okay, that's fine. Whoever say, but what they say, based on that, whether we are constituting to God and service of God, we'll get to know. So what he says Muslim is Allah is a God, I say Krishna is a God. Okay. And next we will talk about what he is going to do about it. What is the
He's
fight
going
we
to
are
strap
going
a
on.
bomb on his torso and then go blow up Mayuri or something, when everyone's in the store. And then everyone's going to celebrate. All the Muslims will celebrate. Oh, he went to Jannat. Now he's 70 virgins and rivers of wine. He's a hero. He's Shahid. So you see, this becomes confusing, right? Now, like for example, Ravana, his son Indrajit, they do puja.
Shiva.
Right, they're doing puja. They have Brahmins. Brahmins are doing the pujas there. So, I mean, you could say they're very pious people. They're doing pujas. And they hired Brahmins. They were doing pujas 24 hours a day for victory, so that Ravana could kill Ram. So, just because they do puja doesn't mean, why are they doing the puja? It's for material benefit.
Yeah.
So, is that really puja? Is that really worship of God? You see, two people can be doing the same thing.
But their intention may be different.
Their intentions could be completely opposite. So this confuses people, these type of questions. Now, the question is, there are two sides. Both want you to join their side. Which side would you join? How would you decide? You might decide not to join either side, but, how could you decide? Well, how do they describe this? They're talking about the transcendental sound, conch shells, right? Now, let's analyze this purport. It's a very interesting purport.
Can I ask something in here? He directs the terms of the surrender of the living entity. He directly controls the senses of Arjuna here. He said, by this time Arjuna fully surrendered, Prabhuji, to Krishna.
No.
Because in here it says that he controlled Arjuna's senses here. The Lord controls transcendental senses of Arjuna in the battlefield of Kurukshetra.
Okay, well, read exactly the phrase you want to ask about.
The Lord, situated in the hearts of the living entities, directs their senses.
Okay, you know what that means? Directs their senses. Okay, go ahead. But he directs in terms of the surrender of the living entity.
Surrender of the living entity.
So therefore, if someone is completely surrendered to Krishna, then he completely directs them. If someone is partially surrendered to Krishna, then he partially surrenders them. And if one is not surrendered to Krishna, then he doesn't direct them. So we see that Duryodhana proved that he was not surrendered to Krishna at all. Although he was a good guy and smart, very smart, and a good guy and an expert diplomat and a good manager also. He was actually a very good manager, but he wasn't surrendered to Krishna. So he couldn't make the right decisions. And you could say Bhisma and Drona, they're both devotees of Krishna, but they were compromised by Duryodhana. So, therefore, they were duty-bound to support Duryodhana, although they knew what was going to happen. Both of them knew they were going to lose the war, because they both knew that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of God. But they were duty-bound to follow Duryodhana. And now you have Arjuna, who is overwhelmed with grief because he's in the throes, as they say, Throes, the throes of the duality of delusion. Can't figure out what to do. He's overwhelmed with this duality. And the duality is based on his desire to be happy, which is the worst criterion in the world. The desire to be. Just like Hitler had the desire to be happy, therefore he murdered millions of people who he thought were obstacles to the happiness of him and his people. So, and Stalin wanted to be happy, but he also murdered millions of people who he thought were obstacles to his. So that's why I'm saying happiness is the worst criterion to make a decision on. You know. So if most people make decisions on happiness, on the basis of happiness, right? And I'm saying it's the worst criterion. No, so now, this is bewildering. What is the right criterion to make a decision? You know. Well, let's look at what he says here. He says, he directs in terms of the surrender of the living entity, and in the case of a pure devotee, he directly controls the senses. So, in the case of a pure devotee like Arjuna, who maybe he didn't surrender right away, but he surrendered as his doubts became eliminated one by Krishna. Then Krishna is directing his senses. What are the senses? You have the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the skin, and the mind. Right? So he's directing them because he's Hrishikesha, the owner of the senses. So how does he direct the senses? Well, he reveals knowledge by which we make the right decision. Okay, so now this is what's happening here. He's saying the Lord has different names according to his different activities. For example, his name is Madhusudana because he killed the demon of the name Madhu. His name is Govinda because it gives pleasure to the cows and to the senses. His name is Vasudeva because he appeared as the son of Vasudeva. His name is Devaki Nandana because he accepted Devaki as his mother. His name is Yasodanandana because he awarded his childhood pastimes to Yasoda of Vrindavana. His name is Parthasarathi because he worked as the charioteer of his friend Arjuna. Similarly, his name is Hrishikesha because he gave direction to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So, if we get to the point where we take direction from Krishna, then we can make right decisions in life. Therefore, Krishna tells Arjuna at the beginning of the 7th chapter, Maya Shakta Manakparta Yogam Yunjan Manasya Asamsayam Samagram Man Yatagyasya Tachinu. Let's look at that. 7th chapter, verse number 1. Okay, so who's going to read 7th chapter, verse number 1? Yes. Kushi, you can read the verse. Go ahead.
The supreme personality of Godhead said, now hear, O son of
Prita.
Partha, how by practicing yoga and full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, know me in full free from doubt.
Very good. Okay, read some of the purport.
Okay. In this 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the nature of Krishna consciousness is fully described. Krishna is full in all opulences, and how he manifests such opulences is described here. Also, 4 kinds of fortunate people who become attached to Krishna, and 4 kinds of unfortunate people who never take to Krishna are described in this chapter. In the first 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, the living entity has been described as non-material spirit soul, capable of elevating himself to self-realization by different types of yogas. At the end of 6th chapter, it has been clearly stated that the steady concentration of the mind upon Krishna, or in other words, Krishna consciousness, is the highest from all of our yoga. By concentrating one's mind upon Krishna, one is able to know the absolute truth, completely but not otherwise. Personal Brahma Jyoti, or localized Paramatma realization, is not perfect knowledge of the absolute truth, because it is partial, full of scientific
Full
knowledge.
and
Full and scientific knowledge is Krishna, and everything is revealed to the person in Krishna consciousness.
that's the point. Everything is revealed to the person in Krishna consciousness, in full Krishna consciousness. So if we surrender completely to the Lord is Rishikesha, the director, the owner of our senses, will direct our senses. He'll reveal knowledge to us so that we can make the right decision. And the right decision is always, well, there's 4 principles of logic to make the right decision. Accept everything favorable for Krishna consciousness. Reject everything unfavorable. Always remember Krishna. Never forget Krishna. Then another 2, when in doubt, ask either Shiksha or Diksha Guru. And number 6, only perform those actions that are pleasing to Krishna. So if you understand these 6 principles of logic, you'll never make a mistake in life.
What is the 6th one, Prabhu?
Only perform those actions that are pleasing to Krishna.
Krishna.
Yeah. So now, how do you know what's pleasing to Krishna? You need to get... When in doubt, number 5, when in doubt, ask Siksha or Diksha Guru. Bona fide Siksha or Diksha Guru. So, see, in college they teach you logic, logic 101. If A equals C and C equals B, then A equals B. Did you learn anything from that? No, you learn it equals, but that's nothing. It doesn't teach you anything about how to live a moral life or how to live a good life, right? Or make the right decisions in life. So, but if you understand these basic 4 principles, and then there's another 2, accept everything favorable for Krishna consciousness, reject everything unfavorable. Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. And when in doubt, ask a Siksha or Diksha Guru, bona fide Siksha or Diksha Guru. And number 6, only perform those activities that are pleasing to Krishna. So then Krishna will take control of your senses. He'll control the senses so that you keep them always engaged in Krishna consciousness, and therefore you don't make a mistake. So then it says, in complete Krishna consciousness, one knows that Krishna is ultimate knowledge beyond any doubt. Different types of yoga are only stepping stones on the path of Krishna consciousness. One who takes directly to Krishna consciousness automatically knows about Brahma Jyoti and Paramatma in full. By practice of Krishna consciousness yoga, one can know everything in full, namely the absolute truth, the living, or meaning Krishna, the living entities, the material nature, and their manifestations with paraphernalia. One should therefore begin yoga practice as directed in the last verse of the 6th chapter. Concentration of the mind upon Krishna, the Supreme, is made possible by prescribed devotional service in 9 different forms, of which Shravanam, hearing, is the first and most important. The Lord therefore says to Arjuna, Tat Shrinu, or hear from me. No one can be a greater authority than Krishna, and therefore, by hearing from him, one receives the greatest opportunity to become a perfectly Krishna-conscious person. One has therefore to learn from Krishna directly or from a pure devotee of Krishna, and not from a non-devotee upstart, puffed up with academic education. So, now we come back. All these names of Krishna are being defined, and the name Hrishikesha is important because he gave direction to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, because he's the owner of the senses, therefore he takes control of the senses of the pure devotee. Arjuna is referred to as Dhananjaya in this verse because he helped his elder brother in fetching the wealth when it was required by the king to make expenditures for different sacrifices. So when King Yudhishthira wanted to perform the Rajasuya sacrifice, to perform the Rajasuya sacrifice costs a lot of money. A lot of money. So he asked his brothers to help him raise that money. So Arjuna knew or heard that there was a place in the Himalayas where a very great sacrifice was performed in ancient times. Already 5,000 years ago is ancient, right? But before that, and in those days in Satya Yuga, when they performed great Vedic sacrifices, it could have been Satya Yuga, it could have been Treta Yuga, they would leave everything where the yajna took place. So they only used pure gold plates and cups and things like that, and there's jewels and silver and all kinds of precious things were just left there. The sadhus would just leave it. They were not, you know, if you and I go there, we try and grab as much as we can, you know, but they would just leave it because they were not, you know, interested in hoarding wealth. So Arjuna found out where that was, so he went and gathered all that so that his brother could do the Rajasuya sacrifice. Therefore he got the name Dhananjaya, the possessor of great wealth. Therefore, and then Bhima is known as Rikodara because he could eat voraciously, and because he could perform Herculean tests. So in other words, everything here, each one of these names is auspicious, and therefore all auspiciousness is on the side of Krishna and Arjuna. Therefore it says, Yatra Yogeshwaro Krishna, Tatra Shri, Tatra Partha Dhananjaya, Yatra Shri Vijayo Bhutir Dhruvam Nitir Matir Mata, Mama, Matir Mama. Wherever there is Krishna, the master of all mystics, and wherever there is Arjuna, the supreme archer, there will also certainly be opulence, victory, extraordinary power, and morality. That is my opinion. So, which side is Krishna on? That's what we have to decide. Which side is Krishna on? Then that should be the side that we should be on. And how to decide that? Well, which side is factually engaged in Krishna's service and manifesting the genuine qualities of devotees. Those genuine qualities are enumerated in the 16th chapter, verses 1 to 3. Let's just take a look at them. So you have fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, self-control, performance of sacrifice, study of the Vedas, austerity, simplicity, non-violence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion to fault-finding, compassion for all living entities, freedom from covetousness, gentleness, modesty, steady determination, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, and freedom from envy and from the passion for honor. These transcendental qualities, O son of Bharata, belong to godly men endowed with divine nature. So these are qualities of devotees. So that's the side we should be on. Mahat Sevam Dwaram Ahur Vimuktes. Those persons who are serving the Mahat, the pure devotee, then the door to liberation is open to them. So now, if you say, well, no, I'm going to work, to help elect Trump, but they're eating meat, they're gambling, they're engaged in all kinds of illicit activities. Or I'm going to help Hillary. I'm going to go door to door for Hillary. Well, wait a minute. These people are very low class people. So how can you be on the side of someone like that? Right? So These are quite, well, of course someone can say, well, you got to choose the lesser of two evils. But they're both evil. What's the lesser of two evils, right? When they're both evil. But, sometimes people make decisions anyway. But to actually proactively work for such people is not a good idea. Because they're flawed persons. Now, you might say everybody's flawed. Okay. But no, not everyone's. Krishna is not flawed. Krishna's pure devotees are not flawed. By the way, when it comes to a pure devotee, even if a pure devotee makes a mistake, because the pure devotees surrender to Krishna, Krishna will turn the mistake into a victory. Huh?
Haribol.
Yeah. So, just like Arjuna, he was not able to kill Jayadratha. The sun went down and he was not able to kill him because Duryodhana's spies brought news that, Arjuna was going to kill Jayadratha, but he made a vow that if he couldn't kill him the next day, he would commit suicide. So their whole strategy that day was to protect Jayadratha, and it succeeded. The sun went down, Jayadratha was still alive, and Arjuna became despondent. And Krishna said, "What's the matter?" I said, "Well, I made this vow. I have to kill myself." And I said, "No, don't worry. Get your arrow ready." He said, "But the sun went down." He said, "Just get your arrow ready." And the sun came up again. Of course, everything's controlled by Krishna. He shot his arrow, killed Jayadratha, but see, he had to kill him in a special way. Whoever, cut his neck off, if his head touched the ground, that person who cut his neck or dropped his head on the ground, he would die. So he shoots the arrow in such a way that his head is cut off, but it shoots up into the Himalaya mountains where Jayadratha's father is meditating. And the head of his son falls right on his lap, and he breaks his meditation and sees this head, and he goes like that, flips it, falls on the ground, the father dies also. Right? Arjuna didn't die. So, it's an impossible feat, right? But Arjuna was able to do it because he completely surrendered to Krishna. So even though there might be a mistake or a discrepancy, Krishna turns it into a victory for the pure devotee. So, the lesson of the wisdom to derive from all this: become a devotee of the Lord. You have nothing to worry about. Everything will work out in some mysterious way with the help of the Lord. Okay, so now we'll go on to the next verse, 16 to 18. And who will read? Somebody? Chapter 1.
अनन्तविजयं राजा कुन्तीपुत्रो युधिष्ठिरः नकुलः सहदेवश्च सुघोषमणिपुष्पकौ कास्यश्च परमेश्वासः शिखण्डी च महारथः दृष्टद्युम्नो विराटश्च सात्यकिश्च पराजितः द्रुपदो द्रौपदेयाश्च सर्वसः पृथिवीपते सौभद्रश्च महाबाहुः शङ्खां दद्मुः पृथक् पृथक्.
Do you read the English transliteration or Sanskrit?
I have Telugu.
Huh?
Telugu.
This is Telugu.
Oh, yeah, the Telugu.
Yeah.
Thought you were reading the Sanskrit and Telugu.
Yeah.
Very good.
Do you want to read, Prabhuji?
Oh, okay, well, let him read a little bit. Then you can read. Good.
He has the
Oh, you have in Telugu. Okay.
Okay. King Yudhishthira, the son of Kunti, blew his conch shell. The Ananta Vijaya and Nakula and Sahadeva blew the Sughosha and Manipushpaka. The great archer, the king of Kashi, the great fighter Shikhandi, Drishtadyumna, Virata, the unconquerable Satyaki, Drupada, the sons of Draupadi, and others, O king, such as the mighty armed son of Subhadra, all blew their respective conch shells. Purport. Sanjaya informed King Dhritarashtra very tactfully that his unwise policy of deceiving the sons of Pandu and endeavoring to enthrone his own sons on the seat of kingdom was not very laudable. The signs already clearly indicated that the whole Kuru dynasty would be killed in that great battle, beginning with the grandsire Bhishma down to the grandsons like Abhimanyu and others, including the kings from many states of the world. All were present here and all were doomed. The whole catastrophe was due to the king Dhritarashtra because he encouraged the policy followed by his sons.
Now we see the danger of weakness. The same weakness by which Gandhi gave in to Jinnah. And look what happened. Millions of people's lives were disrupted, and 1 million people or more were killed or massacred. So, whenever we let sentiment and petty attachments interfere with our decision making, or let's say guide our decision making, then it usually leads to unpleasant situations or catastrophes. So Dhritarashtra, he was never able to control his son. He always gave in to him, and it led to disaster. All his sons died. He had 100 sons because he couldn't control Duryodhana, and they all died. And so many millions of people, 640 million people, were killed in the battlefield. It was a disaster. The whole catastrophe was due to King Dhritarashtra because he encouraged the policy followed by his sons. What was the policy? They were envious of the Pandavas. They wanted to destroy them. But Dhritarashtra's duty was to protect them. He's their uncle, right? He's like the father. In the absence of Pandu, he was the father, but he couldn't deal with them in a proper way because of his attachment to his own son. So this Swajanam syndrome, Swajanam means my people. So when you develop this concept, these are my people, this is my family, or these are my relatives, or these are my countrymen, then it blinds a person. Just like, you hear about these things in Africa, like the Hutus and the Tutsis. There are two people in what was it named? Rhodesia? No. Anyway, one of the countries in East Africa. And they lived together for, hundreds, maybe thousands of years. They're living together, right? But then the politicians got involved, and the Tutsis started massacring the Hutus, right? And they lived together as neighbors, like next door to each other. And sometimes there was intermarriage. The children went to the same school. They invited each other to different events, and now they're killing each other, right? All because of this Swajanam syndrome, my people. There's no such thing as my people. It's a bunch of nonsense. We're all Krishna's servants. We're all Krishna's devotees. That should be the way we look at it. It's not that these are my people, those other people, they're not my people, right? So Dhritarashtra, he was unable to make the right decisions because of his family attachment, and it led to the destruction of his family. That doesn't make sense, does it? And because they all knew Krishna, God is present right in front of them. In fact, he's a relative of them. But that was the problem. He's a relative, right? But he was not on the right side of the family. He was on the wrong side of the family. He was not a Kuru. He was, a Yadu. And you see, this kind of nonsense, it pits one person against another, even though they're the same people, right? and it causes wars and all kinds of suffering. So the whole catastrophe was due to King Dhritarashtra because he encouraged the policy followed by his sons. Okay, you can read.
On 19th, Sa Ghosho Dhritarashtranam Hridayani Vyatas Rasat.
Viradarayat.
Vyadarayat. Okay. Nabhascha Prithvini Chaiva Tumulo Bhyanunadayam. Okay. The blowing of these different conch shells became
uproarious. A lot of noise.
Oh, not okay. Vibrating both in the sky and on the earth. It shattered the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra.
Now they're very discouraged. Go ahead.
Purport. When Bhishma and the others on the side of Duryodhana blew their respective conch shells, there was no heartbreaking on the part of the Pandavas. Such occurrences are not mentioned, but in this particular verse it is mentioned that the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra were shattered by the sounds vibrated by the Pandavas' party. This is due to the Pandavas and their confidence in Lord Krishna. One who takes shelter of the Supreme Lord has nothing to fear, even in the midst of the greatest calamity.
Right. So we see this is like psychological warfare. Right. The blowing of the conch shells. Whoever's conch shells is more, let's say, transcendental, then the others become discouraged. Right. And why was that? Because of the confidence the Pandavas had in the Lord, even though they're greatly outnumbered. They probably were outnumbered 10 to 1 or more, but yet they were confident in facing Krishna. There was once this army of Sikhs, and they were going to fight an army of Muslims, and they were outnumbered 10 to 1, more than 100 to 1. They had, in the army of Sikhs, they only had 100 guys, and in the army of the Muslims, they had over 1,000 soldiers. So the Sikh commander asked his guru, he said, what should we do? And he said, we should go on a march through the desert. He said, what? The desert? He said, yeah. He said, but the desert the opposite way. I mean, the army is over there and we're outnumbered. And what good will that do? He said, just listen to what I say. He said, well, why should we do that? He said, because you got too many men in your army. He said, what? Wait, that's crazy. We only got like 100 guys. They got over 1,000. He said, no, you have too many guys. He said, I don't understand. He said, that's good. That's why you're asking me. I understand. Just listen to what I say. I said, okay. He said, but only take enough water for 3-4 days. He said, but where are we going? He said, we're going on the other side of the desert. But that's at least a week. He said, yeah, but just take enough water for 3 or 4 days. He said, I don't understand. I mean, it's like torture. Maybe we won't make it. He said, that's okay. He said, okay. So he orders them. They only take enough water for 3 days. Right. So they go into and they have to march, in line and, in step also, right, with their full uniforms. And they're walking through a desert, which is extremely hot. So the first day is over, the men are exhausted, and the water is rationed, right? They only have enough for 3 days. And at the end of the first day, the guru tells the commander, says, announce to the soldiers, whoever wants to go back is free to go back. And tell them there's another 6 days of marching. There's only enough water for another 2 or 3 days. So after the announcement, 50 soldiers leave. And then the commander said, why'd you ask me to say that? Look, 50 guys left. He said, don't worry about it. You didn't need them anyway. He said, what? We only have 50 men. Half the soldiers, we have to fight against 1,000 guys. I said, don't worry about it. okay. So they marched the second day. Again, the Guru says, now advance, announce anyone who wants to leave can leave. So 15 men leave. And now the commander's really worried. He said, look, we hardly have enough water for another day or two. We have at least 5 more days. How are we going to do this? He said, don't worry. He said, just say Vaheguru. Don't worry. So, he's like confused, So they walk the next day. Everyone's really getting worried, because they know there's not much water left. So he says, the commander says, don't ask me to tell them to leave. They all leave tonight. He said, no, you say it again. So he says it again. Another 10 guys leave. Right? So what's that now? There's only 25 people left?
25.
Right. So then they walk the 4th day. The end of the 4th day is the last of the water. There's no more water left. There's 3 more days. And the commander said, don't ask me to tell them to leave. They'll all leave. He said, no, you tell them to leave. So he says the same thing. 10 guys leave. So now what's that? 15 people left, right? So they walk the next day. There's no water at the end of the day. And there's no use asking them to leave because, going back is longer than going forward. They'd have no way of getting back, So, and they don't want to leave anyway. They're determined. So they finally make it. At the end of the desert, 15 men. Then the Guru says, tell them to stay at attention. And they can see the water in the distance. They're not allowed to run. They have to stand at attention all day. He said, what is this? He said, they'll die. They haven't drank water for 3 days, and they're exhausted, and they can see the water, and they have to stand at attention. He said, yes. So what if they faint? He said, let them faint. So they stand at attention, through 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. A few of them faint, and they're not allowed to touch the guys that faint. Finally, at 6 o'clock, the Guru says, now you tell them to walk slowly, and they have to carry the guys that fainted. So I think like 4 or 5 men fainted. So the other 10 guys lift up the guys that fainted, and they walk slowly, actually marching toward the river. And he says, and when they get to the river, he says, tell them to stand at attention again. They stand at attention. He said, now they can go in one by one. First the guys that fainted, and then the others. They can help the guys that fainted. So, by around 8 o'clock, it's all finished. And now they're able to replenish themselves, right? So then the Guru says, now we're ready to go back. And the commander said, what? What do you mean, go back? It's only 15 men left. He said, yeah, but they're real men. They're real soldiers. These men are fierce. They will defeat the army. He said, I can't believe it. He said, they have 1,000 men. He said, don't worry. He said, you'll do it. So after they replenish themselves, they rest a couple of days. Then they get enough water to go all the way back. They go back, and then when they get back, they rest a couple of days. And the Muslim army is still there, right? So then the Guru tells them what to do. He said, if we capture the general of the Muslim army, they'll surrender, or at least they'll retreat. So then he tells them what to do and how to do it, and they were able to do it. They captured the general and a couple of his top men, and they actually beheaded them. And all the other soldiers retreated. They had never seen such fierce fighters before in their whole lives. Not one of the men died. Not one of the 15 men died. And they were absolutely fierce, ferocious killers. So, you can see how it's important to be in the association of people who have such strong determination and faith. Therefore it says, Satatam kirteyatamam jatantascha jutavata Namasyantas chamam bhaktya nitya yukta upasate. It's 9th chapter, 14th verse. Ninth chapter, 14th verse. Okay, Yasoda, you want to read? Yasoda. 9th chapter, 14th verse. Okay, good.
Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me, these great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. Purport by Srila Prabhupada.
I say, so the key word here is endeavoring with great determination. Drita vrata. They have a rut, a vow. You know, great determination. These are the type of people they have to associate with. Devotees who have this great determination. You know, they have a vow that they cannot violate. Vow of, faithfulness to Krishna, to follow the regulative principles and so forth. These are the people that one must associate with, because then they become also strong like that. Just like the Guru wanted to get rid of all the soldiers who were not fully committed. He wanted to keep only a small cadre of soldiers who were fully committed, who were not afraid to die, and who were not afraid to go through tremendous austerities, right? And had that strong determination. Then, with such a small number of people, he was able to defeat a major army. Right? Okay, go ahead now. You can read the purport.
Satatam kirtiyanto mayash
Yatantas chadritarata. You don't have to read the Sanskrit, just read the English purport.
The Mahatma cannot be manufactured by rubber stamping an ordinary man. His symptoms are described here. A Mahatma is always engaged in chanting the glories of the Supreme Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead. He has no other business. He is always engaged in the glorification of the Lord. In other words, he is not an impersonalist. When the question of glorification is there, one has to glorify the Supreme Lord, praising His holy name, His eternal form, His transcendental qualities, and His uncommon pastimes. One has to glorify all these things. Therefore, a Mahatma is attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One who is attached to the impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord, the Brahma Jyoti, is not described as Mahatma in the Bhagavad Gita. He is described in a different way in the next verse. The Mahatma is always engaged in different activities of devotional service as described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, hearing and chanting about Vishnu, not a demigod or human being. That is devotion. Shravanam Kirtanam.
What does that say about all the Hindu temples where they're all worshipping demigods or an ordinary human being? You see, go ahead.
That is devotion. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu and Smaranam. Remembering Him.
It doesn't say Shravanam, Kirtanam, Devata. It says Vishnu, right? It doesn't say Sarva Devata, all the Devas. It says Vishnu. Go ahead.
Such a Mahatma has firm determination to achieve at the ultimate end the association of the Supreme Lord in any of the 5 transcendental rasas. To achieve that success, he engages all activities, mental, bodily and vocal, everything, in the service of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. This is called
That is cool.
That is called full Krishna consciousness. In devotional service, there are certain activities which are called determined, such as fasting on certain days, like the 11th day of the moon, Ekadashi, and on the appearance day of the Lord. All these rules and regulations are offered by the great acharyas for those who are actually interested in getting admission into the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the transcendental world. The Mahatma's great souls strictly observe all these rules and regulations, and therefore they are sure to achieve the desired result. As described in the second verse of this chapter, not only is this devotional service easy, but it can be performed in a happy mood. One does not need to undergo any severe penance and austerity. He can live this life in devotional service, guided by an expert spiritual master, and in any position, either as a householder or a sannyasi or a brahmachari in any position and anywhere in the world, he can perform this devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and thus become actually Mahatma, a great soul.
Great. So you see, the door is open for everyone. Sevam Dwaram Ahurmuktas. The door to transcendental life is open to everyone. But what's necessary is to be in association of genuine devotees who are expert in always remembering Krishna and following his instructions in a practical way, and never deviating from the rules and regulations. Okay, so this is Krishna consciousness. What time is it now?
9:30.
Okay, we'll read one more, the next text 21 and 22. Who's going to read? You want to read, Prabhu?
Yeah.
First chapter, text 21 and 22.
Arjuna said, O infallible one, please draw my chariot between the two armies, so I may see those present here who desire to fight and with whom I must contend in this great trial of arms. Purport: although Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, out of his causeless mercy, he was engaged in the service of his friend. He never fails in his affection for his devotees, and thus he is addressed herein as infallible. As charioteer, he had to carry out the orders of Arjuna, and since he did not hesitate to do so, he is addressed as infallible. Although he had accepted the position of a charioteer for his devotee, his supreme position was not challenged. In all circumstances, he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shrishikesa, and the Lord of the total senses. The relationship between the Lord and his servitor is very sweet and transcendental. The servitor is always ready to render service to the Lord, and similarly, the Lord is always seeking an opportunity to render some service to the devotee. He takes greater pleasure in his pure devotees assuming that advantageous position of ordering him than he does in being the giver of orders. Since he is the master, everyone is under his orders, and no one is above him to order him. But when he finds that a pure devotee is ordering him, he obtains transcendental pleasure, although he is the infallible master in all circumstances. As a pure devotee of the Lord, Arjuna had no desire to fight with his cousins and brothers, but he was forced to come onto the battlefield by the obstinacy of Duryodhana, who was never agreeable to any peaceful negotiation. Therefore, he was very anxious to see who the leading persons present on the battlefield were. Although there were no question of a peacemaking endeavor on the battlefield, he wanted to see them again, and to see how much they were bent upon demanding an unwanted war.
Very good. So here we see the reversal of the normal relationship between master and servant. In the world, the relationship of master and servant is not so relishable. But in the spiritual world, it's extremely relishable. Why? Because out of extreme love of Krishna for his devotee, he actually enjoys reversing the roles, where his devotee orders him. And this is even in the material world, it's like that too. Like Prabhupada gives the example of the Prime Minister of England. What's his name? Anyway, in the 1880s, 1890s, there was 100 years war going on between France and England. So the Prime Minister of France ventured to England to meet the Prime Minister of England and to talk about how they could stop this devastating war. And when he arrived at the palace and he saw the secretary of the Prime Minister, he said, "I want to see the Prime Minister. I'm the Prime Minister of France. These are my documents from the King of France." And the secretary said, "Well, he's busy right now. You'll have to wait." He said, "Wait. He said, I've come here to stop the 100 Years' War. So much damage has been done to our countries. This is very important." She said, "Yes, but he's in a very important meeting. You'll have to wait." So he waited. He waited an hour. And finally, he got very impatient. He told the secretary, "Look, I want to go in there and see him. This is important. I've come all this way to stop this war. And, you know, what's so important? There's nothing more important than stopping this war." The secretary said, "I'm very sorry, sir. You just have to wait." So at one point, the secretary goes out of the office to maybe go to the bathroom or something. And the French ambassador becomes very impatient. So he goes and he peeps into the room of the office of the Prime Minister. And to his shock, he sees that the Prime Minister's grandson is playing horsey. He's on his back and he's kicking the Prime Minister in the ribs. And, "Giddy up, Grandpa! Giddy up!" And he's kicking him faster. So this man, at that time, 1880s, 1890s, England was, or Great Britain was, the master of the whole world. They had colonies all over the world. And they were threatening to overrun Europe. There was this 100 Years' War with the French. And this was the most powerful man in the world. But yet, he was being a horse for his grandson, who was kicking him in the ribs and telling him to go faster. So we say, he made the ambassador of France wait indefinitely because he was trying to please his grandson. What was his name? I forget right now. I haven't told that story for a while. Huh? 1890. Yeah. He was the most powerful man in the world at that time. Hathaway. Yeah. Prime Minister of England. Okay. So, Krishna, he actually enjoys becoming the servant of his servants. So there's a different dynamic of master and servant in the spiritual world. Master and servant in the material world is a horrible thing. But master and servant in the spiritual world is a very nectarian thing. And when we get into this type of relationship with Krishna, wonderful things happen. The servitor is always ready to render service to the Lord, and similarly, the Lord is always seeking an opportunity to render some service to the devotee. He takes greater pleasure in his pure devotees assuming the advantageous position of ordering him than he does in being the giver of orders. Since he is master, everyone is under his orders, and no one is above him to order him. But when he finds that a pure devotee is ordering him, he obtains transcendental pleasure, although he is the infallible master of all circumstances. Did you find out the name?
Yeah, Robert Gascoigne.
What?
Cecile? That's the name. I don't know how to say the last name.
1890. He was, okay. Yeah.
We can look at the list and then figure it out.
Yeah. It's just a great bit. Okay, I give up.
I will look it up.
What, Prabhuji, what do you have to look?
Some British Prime Minister.
Oh, Gladstone.
Gladstone.
Yeah.
What is,
Yeah, no, you
what is
have the
name?
list.
Huh?
What is,
Huh?
what is his name?
Lord Gladstone.
Uh,
He's very famous.
And Prabhuji, this Guru, you're saying about Guru Gobind Singh?
I'm not sure which one.
I think you're talking about Muktsar ki ladai, but I'm not sure.
the desert, the Guru.
Yeah. I'm not sure which one.
He was famous.
You're the expert. You're honorary Punjabi. So.
Punjabi.
Yeah. Okay, so we discussed a lot of points today, but this last point is very nectarian. Krishna is called Bhaktavatsala, the friend and well-wisher of his devotees. So we should be very, let's say, sensitive to that. The Lord will take special measures to please his devotee. And then one enters into this very nectarian reciprocal relationship with the Lord. So this is called personalism. If you think God is not a person, he's just some force or some light, then you can never enter into a relationship like that. But beyond the light is this nectarian relationship with Krishna that's beyond any imagination. Therefore, we should aspire to come to the point of completely surrendering to Krishna. But Krishna is so kind and merciful that in spite of such opulence, he played with Arjuna as a friend. Such is the transcendental loving reciprocation between the devotee and the Lord. The relationship between the living entity and Krishna is fixed eternally. It cannot be forgotten, as we can see from the behavior of Arjuna. Although Arjuna has seen the opulence in the universal form, he cannot forget his friendly relationship with Krishna. So Krishna played with Arjuna as his own friend. And when Arjuna realized who Krishna was, he says, "Thinking of you as my friend, I have rashly addressed you, O Krishna, O Yadava, O my friend, not knowing your glories. Please forgive whatever I may have done in madness or in love. I have dishonored you many times, jesting or joking as we relaxed, lay on the same bed, or sat or ate together, sometimes alone and sometimes in front of many friends. O infallible one, please excuse me for all those offenses." So this is 11th chapter, 41st and 42nd verse. Arjuna is apologizing for Krishna for being so intimate with him, because by seeing the universal form, as it happens in the 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna realizes Krishna is not just a friend, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he's been very, let's say, informal with him. Right? But that's what happens when one becomes a pure devotee. Krishna will reciprocate in a very intimate and friendly and let's say, let's say, regimented way. There's intimacy. There are no rules, no principles of approaching God with awe and reverence. One approaches Him with intimacy and love. So this is the nectar of bhakti. Okay, so we'll stop there today and continue some more next week. So homework. Let's see. What was did we do the homework for last week? Huh?
So,
Yeah, there was a, so what was the question? Yeah.
What is the
question was
Tattvam Asi. So basically what does that mean? And oh, 690, page number 690.
690, yeah.
Yeah. 690 or 790? Wait, I think it was 790. Yeah, so Tattvam Asi. So basically, you want to explain because you studied, right? Okay. So there are, like, from the beginning of creation, 3 words. The Om Tat Sat were used to indicate supreme absolute truth. So supreme. So the first goal
3
is
words are taken
from the Vedic hymn. So the first Om is taken from Rig Veda. Om iti etat brahmano nidishtam nama. It is the first goal of life. Then the second word is taken from Chandogya Upanishad 6.8.7 from Tattvam Asi. It indicates the second goal. And Sad Ev Samya Chandogya Upanishad 6.2.1. So the word Om.
Sat.
Oh, Sat.
Mm.
Om
Tat
Tat Sat
yeah.
is derived from these 3, which are the real goal. Combined they become Om Tat Sat. So I think you were asking Prabhu what does Tattvam Asi mean? So Tattvam Asi means what is that word? In Sanskrit translation means thou like you are, like you are everything. I mean that you are. So basically everything you are.
Is
Like
that what it
Krishna
means?
is the supreme. Yeah, in Sanskrit to Hindi it means that.
No, that's not what it means. That's the Mayavadi interpretation of it.
So that's the Sanskrit literal meaning. Tat means you, Tvam Asi. Like you are everything.
That means that.
That.
Tvam
And
means
Tvam means
you.
you. Asi
Asi
means
means
hope.
You are.
You are.
that. You are that existence.
You are that.
The self in its original pure primordial state is wholly or partially identifiable or identical with the ultimate reality.